Cryopreservation, I freeze people to cheat death. Max Moore plans to have his brain cryopreserved after death, intrigued by the potential of future revival. He first encountered the concept of cryopreservation in a 1972 sci-fi show, which didn't impact him until discussed in futurist gatherings. Now the CEO of Alcor, Moore emphasizes on neuropreservation as his choice over full-body preservation. He envisions a future so advanced that today's incurable diseases might be treatable. Cryopreservation is seen as an extension of modern emergency medicine, bridging the gap until future medical advancements. The technology is founded on the idea that what is fatal today could potentially be curable tomorrow. However, cryonics remains unproven, and its success rests on future scientific breakthroughs. Alcor's members worldwide are monitored, and a standby team assists once death seems imminent. After legal death is declared, the preservation process involves cooling the body and administering protective medications. The body fluids are then replaced with an antifreeze solution to prevent ice formation. The procedure continues with the body being cooled gradually to minus 196 degrees Celsius, then stored in a deep freeze. Alcor faces challenges when members die unexpectedly, delaying the cryopreservation process. Despite its uncertainties, Moore remains hopeful about the possibilities of reviving and curing preserved bodies. Cryonics is a controversial field, with Moore acknowledging the unknowns and potential failures. Alcor advises members to secure life insurance to cover preservation costs, making cryonics accessible beyond the wealthy. The organization currently has 984 members signed up for cryopreservation, with costs ranging from $80,000 to $200,000. Many members are uneasy about the concept of cryopreservation, but prefer it to natural decay post-death. Would you consider cryopreservation? Join the discussion on our social media platforms. Hi, I'm Art Kaplan. I'm at the Division of Medical Ethics at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine. Let me tell you about a case that I recently learned of. A patient was dying at a hospital up in Canada in Kingston, Ontario. She was dying of breast cancer that had disseminated throughout her body. The woman was 79 years old. The cancer was in her breast and had spread out to her lungs and other organ systems, and she knew that she was going to die. The physician reported to me that her son had read about cryopreservation, which is the idea of freezing your body so that someday you might be, if you will, loosely defrosted and then brought back so that future scientists and doctors could cure your disease and allow you to resume life. He thought this was very strange, and he hadn't really heard about it before. We had a situation where he wanted to know if that was ethical to even raise this prospect with this gentleman's mom. She, by the way, decided to do it. I know it cost them about $30,000. Not to get grim about it, but what happened was, shortly after death, she was taken to a funeral home, and the process by the company that does this is called deanimation. The blood is drained out of your body, and you're basically infused with a kind of crude antifreeze to preserve your cells, so that when they freeze you, hopefully the cells don't get damaged. You're then dropped down to a very, very low temperature, put into a container with the brain and body preserved with these cryoprotectants, hopefully stopping ice formation, and then off you go into a facility where, if you keep paying your fee, your body will be frozen apparently to eternity. I think this is crackpot science. It borders to me on deceiving people. Why? There are so many steps here that would have to come true in order to make this a possible practical answer to death. We don't really know how long you can wait after death until you freeze a head and a body. We do know that the brain is very sensitive to losing oxygen. Not only does the person who's being sent off to this hoped-for voyage into the future have diseases, but also they are in a situation where you're testing out, if you will, hypotheses that the brain probably will be functional enough, despite going without oxygen for a period of time to get restored. Then hopefully the cryopreservation idea will work, and you won't damage cells when you freeze and defrost, which is a real problem these days even in trying to deal with human eggs. We freeze them, but often, many get destroyed because the defrosting process harms the cells. To put it bluntly, I don't think we have the technology to know how to do this. It's a gigantic experiment. I think it's being sold as a path to live forever, or at least to come back later, but I don't believe there's any science that would back that idea now. even in the future. Sorry to put it this way, but trying to restore mush and then cure the disease that killed you at the age of 79 seems to me incredibly optimistic, deceptive, and just wrong. Happily, there aren't that many people trying this. By the way, I should add that some people do it, but they only freeze their heads. I won't go into the grimness of that. The idea of wanting to live forever, I think, is very interesting. It is something we hear about often as people try to pursue anti-aging interventions. This is probably the most extreme. I would ask everybody to think about this. If your patients ask you about this or someone brings it up in casual conversation, let's assume it worked. Let's assume 200 years from now, you would get defrosted and your disease that killed you would be cured. Maybe even at age 79, they'd be able to give you some sort of intervention that would make you more youthful. It would still be a rather emotionally demanding and, I think, terrifying existence. The people you know are all dead. Your relatives are all gone. Your friends are gone. Presumably, they didn't take the path to cryopreservation. You're living at a time where you don't understand the technology. You don't know what's going on. Many of the things that you enjoyed in your life have been replaced by other kinds of interventions. I think you'd find yourself isolated and almost living a freakish life as someone who was put forward in a different time. Imagine what it would be like for us to go back 300 years and say, I'm alone and I don't know people, but now I'll start existing and being a citizen in the 1700s. Maybe you'd be interested to see what was going on, but I think that would wear pretty thin. In essence, I'm not going to say death isn't reversible, but I'm going to say that if you're banking on being able to come back to life far into the future, I don't think you're going to find cryopreservation the rewarding experience that's being sold to people today. Patient 74 had had little interest in any notion of being stored headfirst in perpetuity in a giant thermos-like tank of liquid nitrogen when her only son first raised the idea. Then came the grim diagnosis. The cancer that originated in her breast had spread to her lungs. She had a year, doctors told her. Suddenly, the 79-year-old Kingston, Ontario woman was quite positive about being cryopreserved, according to her case report. Her son believes that the confrontation with her mortality may have been quite persuasive. In the end, patient 74 denominated was pronounced dead on Mother's Day of 2006. Soon after death, her body was placed in a hospital refrigerator, then packed in ice in a casket 3 hours later for the drive across the border to Clinton Township, Michigan, where, at the Baldwin and Walsh Funeral Home, her blood was drained through her jugular veins, burr holes were drilled into each side of her skull, and first her brain and then her body perfused with cryoprotectants, chemical solutions that help protect tissues and cells from ice formation at deep freeze temperatures. Once suffused with biological antifreeze, her head stuck inside a plastic box filled with crushed dry ice to accelerate brain cooling, the body was transported to the Cryonics Institute, a warehouse squatting in an industrial park outside Detroit. There, patient 74 was zipped into a sleeping bag, placed inside a cooling chamber, slowly cooled to minus 196 C over 6 days, then strapped to a backboard and lowered inside a cryostat. Hers is one of 243 bodies, 15 of them Canadians, in long-term care at the facility waiting to be defrosted or reanimated, 50 or 100 or who knows how many years from now in science, and the cryonicists are convinced it's not only probable but highly likely we'll have worked out a way to bring them back.